Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. Today, I am honored to have as my guest Barbara Ann Mojica. Barbara is an author and parent who provides tools to inspire, entertain, and educate youth. History is the key to solving today's problems. And if you're tired of being bombarded by social media noise, accept the challenge and be a truth teller. And Barbara is going to talk to us all about that today. So I'm really excited. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm very happy to be here and be able to chat with your listeners today.
Awesome. I am excited because, like I told you before, I used to fall asleep in history. And what was your answer?
That you didn't have a very good history teacher, because history is alive, it's reality, it's all of us, and it's not a series of facts and events and dull statistics, but actually just the opposite of that.
Awesome. And then you've managed to make history come alive for people, to make it interesting and to really engage people with history. So I'm going to ask you, from somebody who, again, had issues with history, why should anyone care about history?
Why should anyone care about history? Because we are all a part of history. If you want to know where you came from, you have to understand a history. When you think about it, everything in the world has a history, right? We all have a beginning, and the beginning helps us to understand where we are today and then how to plan to make our today eventually a better tomorrow. And everything is wrapped in history. When we're born, we become part of a family. Our family has a history. Our ancestors came before us and they provided a kind of framework of understanding and knowledge of our culture, our traditions, our experiences. And we are living today with a family, and with that family will eventually come descendants, our children, our grandchildren, who will become a part of that story. And all of our families become parts of communities. So, a community is a group of people who have come together for various reasons. Maybe because they have common traditions, language, culture, foods, experiences, economic interests. For whatever reason, they have come together and have chosen to work together as a community. History, again, is a very important part of our community, learning where we came from, how we got there, understanding the people, the events, what has drawn us together, and then working together now to make that community something better in the future for ourselves and for our descendants. And then our communities, of course, are a part of a larger world. We are also part of a global system. So, what are our communities? Give us that collection, that legacy, that framework of experiences that help us to grow. And together, all communities are part of this larger picture of how we can help large groups of people, citizens of local communities and citizens of the world.
Wow, thank you. That was a lot. And I really appreciate you going deep into that and, to make it help it make sense to everyone, including me. Because, I've heard before that, you need to know your history to know where you're going. But I honestly, like I said, I slept through that history. So it was really difficult, quite boring for me. So again, thank you for that. And I want to ask you though, because I really want to, I like to focus on children and parents and what parents can do to help their children, because our goal here is to raise what Nathaniel Turner put it, like men and women in training, right? Because we're not raising children, we're raising men and women in training. And I thought that was a really good way of putting it. So I told him I was going to steal that. So yeah, so how can we help children become leaders of tomorrow? And how can we use, well, I'll go to the second part with that. So please ask and tell us how we can help children become the leaders of tomorrow.
Well, we have to help our children become critical thinkers. And I think our schools today are not doing a very good job of that. We teach children what to think in order to meet arbitrary standards,
Mhm.
and we don't teach them the process of how to think. So teachers today are forced to spend more and more time following a very rigid set of standards with a curriculum that very very inflexible and kind of unforgiving. So teachers used to have the opportunity of being very creative in their classrooms. Today, they don't really. They spend a lot of time working with this very structured curriculum that offers very little opportunity for creativity. So I think we have to focus more on that how. How do we think and how do we grow our brains? And to do critical thinking, we really have to use our brain. Now, our brain is one of the most underused parts of our body. We spend a lot of time staying in great physical shape. But how much time do we really spend expanding our brain? So we have critical thinking is the ability to focus on a problem, to be able to then get rid of the distractions, get rid of all the noise, and take the problem and look at the facts. How do we discover the facts? Well, we have to get real information. We have to get, and we get data by looking at the real sources of the event, the person, what was happening at that time. So we look at letters, we look at diaries, we look at journals, we look at artifacts from the time period. We don't impose our time period on that person or that event because the way history has been communicated has changed over time. The way we communicated 100 years ago is certainly not the way we communicate today with instant communication. And the when we gather all of this information together, then we have to analyze it, looking at this real information, deciding what was the context of what was going on at that time. Who were these people? How did they react to each other? How did they communicate to each other? Not the way we communicate today. It was very different. What else was going on at that time? Not what else is going on now in our heads. We have to get rid of that our head thinking. We have to get rid of the ego because today we are all focused on ourselves. We're focused on the social media. We're focused on the opinion. It's very important to teach children the difference between facts and opinions and the difference between truth and gossip. And the way we get our information today is often very, very jaded. We have this kind of group think. So we get information and we go to social media. The social media source uses a set of algorithms to present that information to us. Are we getting all the information? No. We're not getting all the information. We're getting a certain part of that information. And what do children tend to do? When they want the answer to something, do they sit down? Do they think about what could be the possible answers? No, they go to the internet, they type in the question. The first answer that pops in, oh, that must be the answer. Or they go to social media. They see what their friends are saying about a certain issue or a certain problem. Oh, all of my friends think this, so that must be the answer. So our way of thinking has become very, very jaded, very clouded, and necessarily truth. So that's what I mean. We have to get rid of this kind of ego thinking, whether that ego thinking comes from certain group that we follow, whether it comes from politics, whether it comes from religion. It's a kind of judgmental way of approaching the facts. So, teaching children the difference between facts and opinions, in my estimation, is a skill that's very, very, very needed. And parents can help do that. I mean, parents have to teach kids to be respectful and honest, but at the same time, they have to develop independent thinking skills, help them see that there are two sides to every problem, that there's not always one answer to a question. Teach them things like I wonder. I mean, if you just throw out those two words to a child, I wonder what, when you're looking at anything, you're walking through a community and you see an old house. Um, to live in school. I wonder what kind of foods they ate. I wonder w- how they traveled. Did they take an airplane? Did they take a bus? Did they take the subway? Did they walk? I mean, just propose showing them that there are differences, that there are always changes, that the way they are experiencing things today are not necessarily the same, and that they should be open minded to look at visual cues, like to look at the way when people are at the way they gesture, to look at the words that people are using when they're watching something on television. Are they seeing people with different viewpoints, or are they seeing the same thing over and over and over again? Well, maybe there's another side to that. So parents have to teach children that there are different ways of approaching things. While we want to have empathy for other people, we also want to respect that there might be differences of opinion, and it's okay to have differences of opinion. And parents should always encourage that with their children in their own family. It's okay to have differences of opinion in the family. Parents don't need to be authoritarian in every aspect of raising a child. True, the parent is the authority, the parent is the model and the guide. But a parent can be wrong. And I think it's important that we show our children humility. We can be wrong. Teach children that they can sometimes negotiate, because a good leader is going to have to learn to negotiate. When a child grows up, a child is going to need to know how to be fair, to be honest, to be respectful, and to always see that what he is thinking right now may be correct, may be incorrect. So
Mm.
a parent should show that they are willing to listen to a child's argument. If a child feels strongly about something, listen to what the child has to say, and then give your opinion, but let the child express the give and the take, and be willing to listen. I think one of the best skills a parent can develop is to listen more than talk. Learn to listen to what the child is saying, and you will learn a lot more about the child than you may never have expected your child to come up with some of the ideas if you don't allow them the time and the opportunity to express them. And that also helps them to learn how to communicate better. If you're encouraging a child to express his or her views, you are teaching them how to be a better communicator. And you can do that one-on-one with the child, and you can do that with siblings in the family,
Mhm.
because it's important for children to learn how to delegate too. So in a family, we should give children appropriate responsibilities and delegate tasks that they will be able to achieve and feel good about themselves that they are able to achieve this. Again, leadership involves delegating, and we need to teach children how to do that. So allow them to help you. Sometimes it's easier to do it yourself. Of course, it will take longer, and etc. But it's important for a child to learn that we have to allow them the ability to succeed, as well as allow them the ability to fail, because we learn a lot more from our failures sometimes than we do from our successes.
We certainly do. And, so often children have difficulties with failure because I think because we put so much attention on the successes that they're uncomfortable when they fail. What can a parent do to help soften that or teach them and guide a child through that process?
Well, showing them, I think, our own vulnerability, giving them examples of times when we failed
Mhm.
and we were able to pick ourselves up and do something else. So if a child understands that parents are not perfect, that they have had experiences in their life that were at that time very, very impactful and very unnerving, but that they were able to pick themselves up and then go on. So for instance, if a child tries a new sport, or is really, really interested in a particular kind of hobby, and then you say, okay, well, you should encourage a child again to pursue their passions, even if you feel, well, this might not really be very good for my kid, but let them try. I mean, you have to allow them to have a certain boldness and the ability to, want to try new things. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So maybe the child wants to try out for the baseball team, and you know that your child really isn't super, super well coordinated and is probably not going to be successful. Let them try it anyway. And if they decide it isn't for them, or if they don't, quote, make the team, then you explain to them, oh, it's okay, So maybe this isn't for you, but perhaps you should try something else, and let them go on to pursue something else. And then you can also give them an example of a time when you failed at something. I know I was very klutzy as a kid, and I always loved school and I loved learning, but when it came to physical sports, not very good. So I tried roller skating, and and tried it, not very successful, fell and skinned my knee, got up, and I never tried it again. I could use that as an example of, well, I failed at that, but later on, when I got older, I became a lot stronger, and I tried all kinds of new things. Like I tried hiking and camping, and I was able to climb this mountain. I did this all day hike and it took me 6 hours, but I got up to the top, and that made me really feel good about myself. So you can give little examples like that to help a child feel better. And if you allow a child enough opportunity to try new things, eventually they will find the things that they succeed in, and those experiences will outweigh those that they failed at. After a while, they build up more and more confidence. So I think that's really important. A lot of parents, like helicopter kind of parents,
Mhm.
they want their child to try new things, but they must be successful at them. And if they're not successful at them, they are sometimes just as disappointed as the child is. And you should never show your child that. You should always tell your child, that's okay, I love you. You tried your best.
Mm.
And the most important thing is that you tried and you gave it your best shot. So now, so what? You may not succeed at that, but there are other things that you can try, and other things that you will be very successful at. And they can point out examples in the child's life where they have made achievements and say, well, do you remember the time that, and give them examples.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then two, just to glean from what you said, praise the process and not so much the outcome. You
Yes.
tried, you did this, you gave it your all. And we all have different gifts. So you will find that gift if you continue. This just may not be it. And now you can eliminate it from that list.
Right. So we are that's of course teaching them resilience too,
Mhm.
because we
Yes.
have to learn resilience, because our world is not going to be this perfect bubble. And when we get older, we're going to try things. We're going to go out for a job. We interview. Some interviews will go very well, and other interviews will not, and we will
Mhm.
fail, and we will, you know, learn that's a disappointment. But will we give up? No, we'll go out and we'll go on another interview, and eventually we may find that dream job that was meant to be. So a lot of times things that appear to be failures turn out to be stepping stones to, new opportunities and new adventures as well.
Right. Yes. Now, while you were saying that, it just like in my head popped the fact that when children are learning to walk, when they fall, we don't tell them, oh, just give it up, you'll never
Right.
get this. Yeah, we've encouraged them. So go back to that, where we were encouraging our children, encouraging the process and praising the process instead of the outcome. You've done it in your lives, parents, as your children develop. Don't stray away from that. Just continue that, just as you want your child to keep trying and doing all the things, because they've accomplished a lot. Whether they're 2 years old and walking, that's a big accomplishment. They fought through a lot of hurdles to get there.
Right. And especially parents who have special needs children, because I spent half of my education career working with children in the general population. And then I went back and I took certification in special ed. And I worked with children at the opposite end of the spectrum, children who had very, very severe needs, autism, Down syndrome, drug addicted children, and so on. So these children took a very long time to meet their milestones. And it was so important for parents to work and never give up on these children, and to work with a team of professionals until that child did succeed. So it's a very this is really super super important, and parents who have children with special needs are understand this a lot easier than parents of a quote normally developing child.
So true. And what I want to encourage parents with children with special needs to do is, as I always tell them, do the hard work now. Because if you build that foundation after, not if, after you have built that foundation, you open your child up to so much learning. It's like, a flower, they just bloom. If you look and because you're discouraged and upset and maybe angry and stay in that mode because you're grieving a child that you thought you were going to have and didn't have. But like somebody said to me the other day, Timothy Stutz, he said, God gives us the child that we need. Didn't give us we don't get the child that we want, we get the child that we need. And that child was gifted to you to help you grow, to help you develop. So you can do it together. And you grow together in that. So do the hard work when they're young. It is exhausting. However, it's more exhausting later when you have a child, a 20-year-old that you're still caring for, when we could have put strategies and tools in place to help them and not get to that, where it's so challenging at 20 when they could have learned tools early in life to help overcome some of these challenges.
As in parents who do suspect that their child has any kind of developmental delay really need to get the help right away. I've worked with children, infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, and the children who got help in infancy
Mhm.
made remarkable progress, so the earlier the better. So that sometimes that denial tries to creep in. Well, maybe he'll grow out of it. Parents should, always keep on top of a child, from infancy, anything you can do. If you suspect that there is an issue, get the help early.
Yes. And it's better to get more help than you need than no help at all. Get the ego out of the way. I was introduced to a family recently they have a 2-year-old and they need help, but they don't want anybody to come to their house to provide that help. And my thing is, if I don't come to your house and teach you what to do with your child, how do we get that progress? So it's really important to just, like you said, get the ego out of the way and receive the help. There is so much help available with early intervention.
Yes, and it's in most cases there is more help available for early intervention than there is when the child is older. Because once the child is older, the stresses of especially if a child is in public education, the stresses of the system, they will allocate money, but they will try to put the child in the least restrictive environment. And very often, a child who has not had that help at an early age is not going to flourish in the least restrictive environment. That child is going to need more intensive services than you're going to be able to get. So again, there is more help available when the child is an infant, a toddler, a preschooler than there is on the school age level.
Yes, there certainly is. So again, I just want to encourage parents, go ahead. If you think, if you feel, if you sense, you don't have to have any confirmation. Just go with that feeling because your gut is your guide for your child. Go with that feeling and get all the tests done. Do all the things because your child deserves a future where they can reach their full potential instead of waiting and then they don't develop the way they should. They miss milestones, and it just gets more and more difficult to teach a 5-year-old who hasn't met 1-year-old milestones, those milestones. Let's try to do it right, around that age. Note it's never too late. However, the earlier you start, the better.
Right. And the earlier you start, the more opportunity to have the child completely be able to adapt to a kind of general school age curriculum by the time that child gets to kindergarten. In a large majority of the cases, the child is able to function very well in a school environment. So in some cases, all of the child's needs can be met by that time.
Yes, absolutely. So, Miss Barbara, I want to be mindful of your time. So, before we leave, are there any last words you'd like to impart to our audience?
Well, I always tell people in my books, a character who narrates my series tells them if you don't know your history, you don't know what you're talking about. And that is very important to me. Again, we need to know where we came from to understand how we got to today and how we're going to move into the future. But on top of that, I would encourage everyone to learn something new every day. Develop that curiosity. Live to learn so you can learn to live a better life for you, for your family, for your community. And if we all did that, we would have, of course, a better world in place.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well said. Now, people, I want to leave you with, because don't let Barbara go. Please hold on to her. Go to littlemisshistory.com where you can remain engaged and learn more tips and tools to help your child, to help yourself, to empower yourself so that you can teach your child. So please go to littlemisshistory.com. Thank you and be blessed.
Thank you so much.